Our video begins in Helmand, Afghanistan in 2013. Gary Cobb works as a spotter for the Jackal. When Gary spots the target, he urges Dogan to shoot so they can leave quickly. However, Dogan hesitates, doubting the target is the right man. Frustrated, Gary asks how much longer they need, but Dogan insists they'll take as long as necessary. After 6 hours of waiting, Dogan finally takes the shot, eliminating the target, and the team flees back at the base. They unwind by playing games. Captain Baldwin offers Dogan a drink and casually asks if anyone is interested in a trip to Cyprus. Meanwhile, the Jackal marks the kill on the chart, celebrating his success with his teammates in Cyprus. While celebrating, Jen bumps into Gary, nearly sparking a fight. Janine strikes up a conversation about their time in Helmand and might even offer 20,000 per target. He hands them his card before leaving in Anra, Turkey. Dogan and Gary successfully carry out an assassination and make their escape in a waiting vehicle. Jen later informs them that his friend is thrilled with their work. The pair receive their payment and Jen praises them, declaring they are the best back in Afghanistan. Dogan learns that their new target is Nij Khan, a Taliban field commander attending a wedding. Captain Baldwin explains that Khan must be taken alive. Dogan and Gary are assigned to oversee the operation from a vehicle with Ronnie. Before long, Dogan and Gary set up their observation post as the rest of the team approaches the compound. In trucks, one soldier attempts to negotiate with the guards at the entrance to gain access to KH. During this tense exchange, Gary spots a shooter positioned above the compound. The guards inform the soldiers that the deputy governor is inside and they cannot enter armed. Dogan eliminates the shooter above the compound, triggering a firefight. Gunfire erupts. The team take out the guards at the gate before moving in and neutralizing everyone inside the wedding. Gary and Dogan realize the gravity of what has just happened, with one of them seemingly losing control again. Both men disturbed by the carnage. Walter, trying to cover up the incident, insists they make it look legitimate. He radios in a report claiming they are pinned down and under fire. Before departing, they are sternly warned not to speak of what transpired. Once they are at a safe distance, the compound is destroyed in an explosion. In the present, at MI6 headquarters, Vince reveals he has Alexander Dwin's file. When Bianca attempts to read Ito reminds her that access is authorized, but the file must remain in the room, and so must he. Bianca delves into Dwin's history, learning that Alexander James Gordon Dugan joined Sandhurst as an officer cadet. The file highlights Dwin's exceptional determination and sniper training, as well as his involvement in a covert special forces unit during his time in Afghanistan. On April 23, 2013, while en route to a mission, the entire unit was wiped out in a massive explosion. Despite the official reports, Bianca struggles to accept that Dugan is truly dead. During the said mission, Dugan notices a mound with an IED placed on top and spots movement nearby. He asks the driver to stop and requests Gary accompany him to investigate, carefully scanning for more IEDs. Dugan approaches the mound and discovers a child's tricycle. To Gary's shock, Dugan uses a phone to detonate an explosion that wipes out the rest of the unit. Stunned, Gary demands an explanation, but Dugan simply states that they need to disappear and go somewhere they can't be found. In the present, guards raid a boat searching passengers for weapons. The Jackal observes from the shore through tourist binoculars. Meanwhile, Xena angrily slams a machine. She reminds him that UDC is set to launch River in 48 hours. He turly replies that he isn't on vacation and walks away. The scene shifts to UDC, who is swimming in the ocean, flanked by bodyguards on jet skis. Armed security personnel keep watch from outside the house. Elsewhere, Bianca Pullman conducts research on Captain Mike Baldwin in the Secret Intelligence Service database. She later visits him in person, finding him bedridden and dying of lung cancer. Introducing herself as an MI6 agent, she presses him for answers about what happened in Helmand. When Baldwin tries to call the nurse, she snatches the call light remote from his hand, stating that the nurse will bring his morphine after they've talked. Bianca is informed that the operation is being shut down. Frustrated, she asks if they're simply supposed to admit defeat, insisting that she's closing in on the Jackal. Kirby dismisses her protests and demands she let it go. When Bianca tries to argue further, Kirby quickly shuts her down. Meanwhile, the Jackal stuffs several fake passports into his pocket. He begins packing his bags elsewhere. Nua warns Charles that Alvaro has been dealing with Jimmy, a dangerous gangster. Frantic, she reveals that Jimmy knows about the money. Charles assures her he'll handle the situation later. Charles meets with Alvaro, who informs him that the meeting with Jimmy will take place at Hotel Sierra in La Victoria. Charles promises to accompany him. Alvaro embraces him in gratitude. The Jackal borrows a boat. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Jimmy begins to grow impatient, questioning whether Charles is actually coming. Alvaro reassures him, insisting that Charles will show up. Jimmy then asks how much Charles is worth, and Alvaro replies that he's worth millions from international finance as a waiter. refills their glasses. Jimmy suddenly slumps over the table, prompting her to scream. The camera pans to reveal that the fatal shot came from a boat 1 kilometer away. The scene shifts to the Jackal entering room 7, where he attaches a silencer to his rifle. Elsewhere, Bianca lies on her bed reading a news report about Jimmy's assassination. She accesses the intelligence database and discovers that the assassin demonstrated a high degree of precision and skill. Later, the Jackal tells Bogdan that he's trying to photograph the elusive Kandahar. After a short distance, he asks Bogdan to stop the boat, claiming to have seen something. As Bogdan halts the boat and looks away, the Jackal swiftly slits his throat without hesitation. He begins setting up his gun on the boat, securing it on a gimbal. After completing the setup to stabilize the gun, the Jackal tests it by firing a shot at a rock near the island. Meanwhile, UDC feels too drained from a rough night to follow his usual routine of going for a swim. Teddy tries to persuade him, encouraging him to stick to his habits. The Jackal receives an alert on his device and notices a drone hovering above him. To avoid suspicion, he pretends to be fishing elsewhere. Keith discusses Bogdan's boat with another man, puzzled about why it's stationary. As UDC and Teddy head downstairs and walk outside, the Jackal spots them and quickly puts on his gear to set up his shot. Just as he's ready, a speeding boat passes nearby, creating a wave that disrupts his aim and causes him to miss his opportunity. Security dispatches a jet ski to check on Bogdan's boat. The Jackal notices the jet ski approaching and shoots the driver. Back at the surveillance center, a security guard monitoring the cameras informs Keith that the man on the boat is armed with a sniper rifle. UDC is urgently warned to get out of the water. Both he and a guard dive under, staying submerged for several seconds. The Jackal, watching closely, times their movements. When they surfaces, the Jackal fires and hits the guard instead of UDC. The others on the team urge UDC to stay underwater, knowing the sniper won't have a clear shot. The Jackal, however, continues to count, waiting for the right moment. When UDC eventually surfaces to catch a breath, the Jackal fires again, this time hitting him in the back of the neck, neutralizing him instantly. With the mission complete, the Jackal flees using Bogdan's boat, pursued by security on jet skis. The scene shifts to the Jackal attempting to escape in a car. As he approaches a police checkpoint, he starts to panic upon realizing they intend to search his vehicle. When asked to open the trunk, he panics further, runs over an officer and speeds away. A police car gives chase, leading to a high-speed pursuit through the city streets. Eventually, the Jackal manages to evade capture. Meanwhile, Bianca has a private conversation with Isabel Kirby about Jimmy Taro, a petty criminal who was killed in Spain. Bianca suspects the same killer is behind both Taro's death and the UDC case. However, Isabel insists the case is closed and reminds Bianca of her previous failure, suggesting she find another job if she cannot move on. In response, Bianca declares that she quits. The Jackal crashes his car while swerving to avoid a boy on the road. Later, a Croatian man discovers the Jackal trapped in his overturned vehicle. Theodist helps him out and mentions that he has already called the police. The Jackal pulls a gun on him, takes the keys to his truck, and notices a woman nearby also. Moments later, the car explodes. The Jackal drives to a secluded dead end where he treats his injuries and changes his appearance. He then tosses a lit lighter into the truck, setting it on fire, and pushes it over a nearby cliff. Observing a couple near two caravans, the Jackal puts on a ring and approaches them, introducing himself to Liz and Trevor. Pretending to be unwell, he claims his wife is in Saffron Walden and doesn't want him to drive. He convinces them that the hospital is just 15 minutes away and asks for a ride. Trevor agrees to take him there. The Jackal rides with the couple, but when they question why they haven't reached the hospital after driving for a while, he pulls out a gun. He informs them of a change in plans. They're now heading to the Montenegro border. Instead, he estimates the journey will take about 79 minutes and assures them he won't hurt them if they follow his instructions. Meanwhile, Isabel visits Bianca at her house and reveals a potential lead to reopen the case. She urges Bianca to pursue it and bring the matter to a conclusion. Isabel insists the operation must be unsanctioned and orders Bianca to eliminate the target as soon as possible. At the border, they encounter another police checkpoint. The Jackal instructs Trevor to take a road to the right once they start moving. When the camper van stops, Trevor asks if he can step out for a smoke and even offers one to the Jackal. During the conversation, Trevor cautiously asks if the Jackal intends to kill them. The Jackal denies it. After returning to the camper van, the Jackal announces it's time for bed. Liz stabs the Jackal in the back with a knife and Trevor quickly joins the fight. However, the Jackal gains the upper hand, shooting Trevor in the stomach before fatally shooting Elle. Meanwhile, Bianca meets Vince Pine and Cody Spain and explains that their operation is entirely off the record. Vince asks what they'll do if the target isn't there, but Bianca is confident he is, or at least someone important to him will be the next morning. The jackal walks away from the camper just as it explodes. Later he is aboard on a bus for the Balkan Bird tour. Bianca and Vince meet with Detective Rema, who reveals that Taro had been with someone at the time of his murder. The individual was cleared of involvement and subsequently released. When Vince asks for a name, Detective Remica identifies him as Alvaro Gonzalez Martin. She also provides a photo and explains that Alvaro's sister is married to a wealthy man named Charles Kropp. Bianca and Vince observe Nuri from a distance. Bianca insists they'll wait just as the jackal would. She is determined to capture him alive despite it not being part of the plan. Vince tries to dissuade her, warning that the jackal is extremely dangerous and operating on his home turf, but Bianca refuses to back down. Inside the house, Nuri begins packing money and clothes. Moments later a vehicle arrives on the property, prompting Bianca and Vince to check if it's the jackal they watches. Nuri leaves with her baby in a taxi, leading Bianca to suspect that she's fleeing. Meanwhile, the jackal picks up a vehicle at the airport and eventually returns home. Bianca spots him through her binoculars and notices that he appears to have an injury on his right shoulder. Once the jackal enters the house, Bianca and Vince follow. Inside, the jackal discovers that Nuria is already gone. As he processes this, he receives a call from Zena warning him that they are coming for him in Spain. Suspicious, the jackal heads to his hidden room and finds that some of his money is missing. While the jackal starts packing, Bianca and Vince move closer. Meanwhile, Alvaro enters the house, calling for Nuria and saying they need to talk. Hearing noises, he draws his gun and turns on the lights, only to find Bianca and Vince. Before he can act, he is shot. The jackal hears the gunfire and readies his weapon, locking the door to his room. As Bianca moves cautiously, she unknowingly ends up on the opposite side of a wall from the jackal. He sees her through a crack, but she doesn't notice him. After regrouping with Vince, Bianca concludes that there's no sign of the jackal and decides to flush him out by activating the house alarm. Seconds later, Vince notices a laser on Bianca's head and quickly pushes her out of the way. In the process, he is shot while trying to save her. As Vince collapses, Bianca and the jackal exchange gunfire. When the shooting subsides, Bianca calls out saying no one else has to die. She cautiously moves closer, unaware the jackal is hiding behind a wall. Addressing him as Dugan, she admits she fights because she enjoys winning. The jackal responds that he likes to win too. Bianca pleads, saying it doesn't have to end like this, but now standing behind her, the jackal coldly replies it does and shoots her. Bianca falls to the ground and the jackal stands over her, silently watching. Friends, if you liked the story, then like the video, and if you are new on the channel, then subscribe to the channel.